Woggy woggy wand everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bible with the Daily Tapper. Last time Bible chapter Z, we looked at chapter 12 of Leviticus, the purification after childbirth. But today, we'll be looking at chapter 13 of Leviticus, regulations about defiling skin diseases. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When anyone has a swelling, or a rash, or a shiny spot on their skin, they may be defiling skin disease. They must be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons who is a priest. The priest is to examine the sore on the skin. If the hair in the sore has turned white, and the sore appears to be more than skin deep, it is a defiling skin disease. When the priest examines that person, he shall pronounce them ceremonially unclean. If the shiny spot on the skin is white, but does not appear to be more than skin deep, and the hair in it has not turned white, the priest is to isolate the affected person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to examine them. If he sees that the sore is unchanged and has not spread in the skin, he is to isolate them for another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to examine again, and if the sore has faded and has not spread in the skin, the priest shall pronounce them clean. It is only a rash. They must wash their clothes, and they will be clean. But if the rash does spread in the skin after they have shown themselves to be the priest to be pronounced clean, they must appear before the priest again. The priest is to examine that person. If the rash has spread in the skin, he shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling skin disease. When anyone has a defiling skin disease, they must be brought to the priest. The priest is to examine them. And if there is a white swelling in the skin that has turned the hair white, and if there is a raw flesh in the swelling, it is a chronic skin disease, and the priest shall pronounce them unclean. He is not to isolate them, because they are already unclean. If the disease breaks out over their skin, and so far as the priest can see, it covers all the skin of the affected person from head to foot, the priest is to examine them. And if the disease has covered their whole body, he should pronounce them clean. Since it has all turned white, they are clean. So white's clean, eh? But whatever raw flesh appears on them, they will be unclean. When the priest sees the raw flesh, he shall pronounce them unclean. The raw flesh is unclean. They have a defiling skin disease. If the raw flesh changes and turns white, they must go to the priest. The priest is to examine them, and if the sores have turned white, the priest shall page turn. It's so long. There's not the whole of this. All of that. I don't know. All of that. 12 is so short. Pronounce this affected person clean, they will be clean. When someone has a boil on their skin and it heals in the place where the boil was, white swelling or reddish white spot appears, they must present themselves to the priest. The priest is to examine it, and if it appears to be more than skin deep and the hair is turned white, the priest shall pronounce the person unclean. It is a dividing skin disease that has broken out where the boil was. But if, when the priest examines it, there is no white hair in it and is no more skin deep and faded, then the priest shall isolate them for 7 days. If the spreading on the skin, the priest shall pronounce them unclean. It is a dividing skin disease. But if the spot is unchanged and has not spread, it is only a scar in the boil, and the priest shall pronounce them clean. When someone has a burn on their skin and the flesh is reddish white or white spot that appears in the raw flesh, the burn, the priest is to examine the spot, and if the hair in it has turned white and it appears to be more than skin deep, it is a defiling skin disease that has broken out in the burn. The priest shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling skin disease. But if the priest examines it and there is no white hair in the spot, and if it's not more than skin deep, it is faded, then the priest is to isolate them for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is examine that person, and if it is spreading in the skin, the priest shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling skin disease. If, however, the spot is unchanged, it does not spread and the skin has faded, but is swelling as from the burn, and the priest shall pronounce them clean, it is only a scar from the burn. If a man or woman has a sore on the head or chin, the priest shall examine their sore, and if it appears to be more than skin deep and the hair is yellow and thin, the priest shall pronounce them unclean. It is a defiling skin disease on the head or chin. But if, when the priest examines the sore, it does not seem to be more than skin deep, and there is no black hair in it, then the priest is to isolate the affected person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest will examine the sore, and if it is not spread and there is no yellow hair in it, if it does not appear to be more than skin deep, then the man or woman must shave themselves, except for the affected area, and the priest shall keep them isolated another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest will examine the sore, and if it has not spread in the skin and appears to be no more than skin deep, the priest shall pronounce them clean. They must wash their clothes, and they will be clean. But if the sore does spread in the skin after they are pronounced clean, the priest examines them, and if he finds the sore spread in the skin, he does not need to look at the yellow hair. They are unclean. However, if the sore is unchanged as far as the priest can see, and if black hair has grown in it, the affected person is healed, they are clean, and the priest shall pronounce them clean. When a man or woman has white spots on the skin, the priest is examining them. And if the spots are dull white, it is a harmless rash that has broken out on the skin, they are unclean. A man who has lost his hair and his bald is clean. If he has lost his hair from the front scalp and his bald forehead, he is clean. But if he has a reddish white sore on his bald head or forehead, it is a defiling disease breaking out on his head or forehead, the priest is examining them. And if the swelling sore on his head or his forehead is reddish white, like a defiling skin disease, the man is diseased and is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him unclean because of the sore on his head. Anyone with such a defiling disease must wear torn clothes. Let their hair be unkempt. Cover the lower part of their face and cry out, "Unclean! Unclean!" As long as they have disease, they remain unclean. They must live alone. They must live outside the camp. Regulations about defiling molds. As for any fabric that is spoiled with a defiling mold, any woolen or linen clothing, any woven or knitted material, linen, wool, or any leather, anything made of leather, if affected area in the fabric or leather, woven, knotted material, any leather article is greenish or reddish is defiling mold, and must be shown to the priest. The priest is to examine the affected area and isolate the article 7 days. On the 7th day, he is to examine it, and if the mold has spread in the fabric, the woven knitted material, or the leather, whatever is used, it is a persistent defiling mold. The article is unclean. He must burn the fabric, the woven, or knitted material, or wool, or linen, or any leather article that has been spoiled because the defiling mold is persistent. Article must be burned. But if, when the priest examines it, the mold has not spread in the fabric, the woven, knitted material, or whatever, he shall order the spoiled article be washed. Then isolated for 7 days. After the article has been washed, the priest examine it again. The mold has not changed, blah blah blah. Spread, burn it, no matter what side of the fabric. If when the faded article has been washed, tear the spoiled part of the fabric, the woven knitted material, but if it appears the fabric, the material or the mold, it must be burned. Any fabric woven knitted material, when the decided article is washed, must be washed, then it be clean. These regulations concerning the mold, blah blah blah. From now to then, clean or unclean. Thank you all for listening. It's been a pleasure. I am Daddy Dabber, and this is the